We told the Russians what we was going home and left them there beside the car, but it sank so much that they couldn't move it. When we got home, Dad got on the phone and ordered more pizzas, but the pizza shop said what he had ordered them before, but what the pizza deliverers had got chased by a big car, and they wasn't going to do that again, and what Dad owed them money for the pizzas. Dad shouted what he didn't get the pizzas, so he didn't have to pay for them, but he would pay for them if he got more. Pizza shops said that they would send more pizzas, but they didn't want no trouble. Dad said just get the pizzas here and quick. We ran outside to wait for the pizzas, and Dad lay down on the sofa to watch the telly. We was waiting for ages outside and the pizzas didn't come, so we went back in, and Dad said he had just watched a program on the telly about a thing what is like a monkey called a Sasquatch, what stinks like a skunk and has got big feet, so it's called a skunk ape, and it's called Bigfoot as well. I said, why isn't it called a skunk monkey? But Grandad said, what apes are monkeys? And Mum said, what I was a skunk monkey. And you said Mum was right, and we fought. Dad shouts, what the Sasquatch isn't a monkey, it's like a smelly gorilla, but it is as intelligent as a man and walks like a man. Granny cackles and shouts, what that's like Grandad, except Grandad walks like a gorilla and has the brains of a monkey. Dad says that's not the point. Mum says, what is the point then, because she doesn't want to hear about a skunky monkey. Dad says that the point is that nobody has ever seen a Sasquatch properly because they are good at hiding. I said that is stupid because you can just follow the smell to where they are hiding, and if they've got big feet you can follow their footprints because they'll be big and easy to see, and it's probably their feet that are smelly anyway. Grandad says that Sasquatches don't exist. I say that if you can smell them then they must exist. Mum says Dad has got confused with a kumquat, which is a sort of squishy fruit. Dad says he isn't confused, and if we get a picture of one we can sell it to newspapers and magazines and be famous and rich. You say you think Grandad is right and Sasquatch aren't real. I say what they must be real because Dad saw them on the telly and everything on the telly is true. Dad says what we all have to go up to Boggy Wood and take a picture of someone wearing a gorilla suit because Boggy Woods is only a few scrubby trees on a roundabout near the town centre. Everybody knows gorillas don't live there, so everyone will think it's a picture of a Sasquatch. You say you want to wear the gorilla suit and pretend to be a Sasquatch. I say you can't because you are too little, but I will wear the suit and I'll be better because I'm bigger. Dad said that I was too little as well, which weren't fair. But Dad says what we need a big costume because Sasquatches is big, so we need someone big to go in it. I say that baby Sasquatches aren't big, but Dad says we need a picture of a grown-up big Sasquatch. But, to make it look like a proper picture of a Sasquatch, the picture must be taken by an idiot who doesn't know how to use a camera. The picture must be blurry and fuzzy and out of focus. When we make a movie of the Sasquatch, the person holding the camera has to shake it around and point it in the wrong direction, so nobody can see the Sasquatch properly. The proper way to hunt a Sasquatch, Dad says, is to stumble around in the woods shouting and whistling and banging trees with big sticks. And when you see a Sasquatch, you can't say, there's a Sasquatch. You have to say, what the bloomin' heck is that? And run away. Aunt Myrtle revs up her sewing machine and says she'll knock out a Sasquatch costume. Dad says we need somebody big to go in the costume. Mum says she will star in the movie. But first off we need money to pay for the pizzas. Granny barks with excitement and shouts, I'll sort it, and runs out of the door and down the lane to the road where she stops and lurks behind a bush, watching the traffic. The man on the motorbike didn't expect to see a crazy old lady suddenly lurch out from behind a bush and fall on the road in front of him. He stopped his bike and got off and went over to see what the problem was. Granny didn't move until the man bent over a bit more. Then she suddenly screamed, slammed her hook behind his ankle and hiked him to the ground. As soon as he fell, Granny jumps up, gives the man a few kicks for good measure, leaps onto the motorbike and speeds away, swerving away through the traffic, howling and hitting the tops of cars with her hook. So he goes down to the road to see the man and tell him what Granny has just gone to town to get some money for some pizzas and she is good at driving motorbikes so he shouldn't worry. The man were right big and he were hairy and his clothes were dirty and he was smelly as well. He was shouting what he wanted the bike back and it were a special kind of motorbike, what it were called a hog. I knew all about it because I had seen it on telly, and tell everybody what it means the man is a Hell's Angel, which means he is a sort of violent, smelly outlaw with a big motorbike and nothing to do except hit people. The man says what I'm wrong. He isn't a Hell's Angel, and he doesn't hit people. He says he is called Jim, and he is a mechanic from Bootle, and it isn't his motorbike. He had just fixed the motorbike and was testing it before it went back to the owner. Mum tells Jim not to worry and that Granny will test the bike for him. Jim says that he wanted to ring the police and tell them that Granny has stolen the motorbike, but in the distance we can hear the sound of the motorbike and it was revved right up. and we could hear alarms and sirens, and we told Jim that he didn't have to bother ringing the police. It sounds like Granny had just done a bank job and what the police were chasing her, so they should be here in a couple of minutes. But we was wrong. We saw Granny go past, waving her hook in the air and howling. As she went past, she threw a box into the bush, but she didn't stop. She put the motorbike up on its back wheel, pumped her hook in the air and accelerated off through the traffic, screaming abuse at the drivers. Then there were sirens and flashing lights and loads of police cars go past chasing Granny, and then they was gone. We take the box inside and Grandad smashes it with a hammer to open it, and it's full of money, what is good because we need money to pay for the pizzas, and it reminds us that we still haven't got them. Uncle Ted says what the pizza deliverers are probably delayed because the police will have roadblocks up to catch Granny. I say that won't work because Granny doesn't stop for roadblocks. Just then we hear the sounds of sirens. We rush to the window and see police cars racing down the street, and then there's a roaring sound, and this time it's not the police chasing Granny, it's Granny on the bike chasing the police. Then there's an even louder roaring sound, and hundreds of big motorbikes go past chasing Granny. Mum says what the heck is Granny on? Jim says what the motorbike Granny is on belongs to Psycho Sam, the leader of the Hells Angels. Mum says what because Granny robbed the bank and got away on Psycho Sam's motorbike, the police are probably looking for Psycho Sam, so they should leave Granny alone. And Dad says what Psycho Sam probably just wants his motorbike back, but it's a special motorbike what cost a fortune, with a bloomin' big engine what's noisy and smelly and goes fast and looks right impressive, so Granny won't be giving that back in a hurry, so he should leave Granny alone as well. Just then, Aunt Myrtle shouts what the Sasquatch costume is nearly ready and has got to be tried on for size, and she brings out a big black baggy thing what she says looks like the head of a giant gorilla what is the same as a Sasquatch's head. I say that it doesn't look like a head, it looks like a floppy bag, and where is the rest of the costume? Aunt Myrtle tells Jim to put the head on so she can see where to cut the eye holes. Jim said what he was too worried about the motorbike to play silly games, but Dad says what it weren't a silly game, we was going to make a movie about a Sasquatch what was going to make us famous and rich. So Jim put the baggy thing on his head, and it were incredible. When it were on, and when Aunt Myrtle had adjusted it and strapped it on proper, it did look like a Sasquatch. And Jim were big, and, without eye holes, he couldn't see, so he was sort of stumbling around, so it were scary as well. Dad said Aunt Myrtle were brilliant and what Jim was going to be a fantastic Sasquatch, and he should put the rest of the costume on. Jim says something, but the head muffles his voice so we can't hear. Aunt Myrtle says Jim has to take his clothes off and put the rest of the costume on because what the rest of the costume is got to be fitted proper and adjusted proper or it won't look right. Jim makes noises what sounds like he doesn't want to take his clothes off or put the rest of the costume on. Mum says she'll help Aunt Myrtle take Jim's clothes off and tells us to get out. Just then, Grandad shouts what the pizzas have arrived, so we run out to get them, and we can see two little scooters coming up the street. They was piled with boxes of pizzas, and it were fantastic to see them. Dad went back in to get the money to pay them, and we shouted and waved and cheered because we were starving. The pizza deliverers got so close we could smell the pizzas, and they were just slowing down when Jim stumbles out of the front door right in front of the scooters. He is wearing the Sasquatch head, and Mum and Aunt Myrtle had put the rest of the costume on, and it were the right shape but the wrong colour. The costume looked like a sort of giant hairy gorilla with long arms, but it were made out of a pink bathrobe, and the hands and feet were made from furry old mittens and slippers, what had pictures of fluffy kittens on them. Jim stumbles and blunders around trying to unstrap his head, but Aunt Myrtle runs out of the house holding a knife, saying that Jim can't see and she needs to cut eye holes in the Sasquatch head. We shout to the pizza deliverers that it's not a real Sasquatch, although they can see that, and as they swerve around we yell at them to stop, and that the woman waving the knife is Auntie Myrtle, and she just wants to cut eye holes, and Dad runs out of the door waving piles of money at the deliverers and shouts at them to stop, and Uncle Ted hurls his wooden leg at them, but they turn around, and just then a bloomin' helicopter comes down out of nowhere, and it's black and it's got guns sticking out of it and people with guns leaning out of it, and it hovers above the yard and ropes fall out of it and people in uniform slide down towards us and the pizza deliverers get out of sight as fast as they can with our pizzas. Mum yells that this is what happens when Granny thinks and she's not having it no more. And that was just the start, because when Granny thinks, things can get right revved up.